Hi, I'm Jason Marczak, Director of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center. Thank you so much for joining us for this Experts of the Americas discussion. I'm thrilled to be joined today with Vicki Assevero, who is the Senior Caribbean Fellow and the new Caribbean Initiative that the Adrienne Arsht Center just launched this past month in October. Vicki, so great to have you with us and so great to have you on board the Atlantic Council.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. It's really a pleasure. It's a little bit of a steep learning curve, but I think it's going to be very exciting.
Well, this is fantastic. You know, we started we had the Caribbean Initiative because we continue to believe that there's a lack of attention in Washington to the Caribbean, and that issues in the Caribbean deserve much greater attention than they currently receive. And not only that, but also that there's an opportunity to work with the Caribbean and in a collaborative way, that there's many issues that are on the table and many ways in which we can deepen that partnership that we've yet to tackle as the United States and as the Caribbean. So I'll start off with a first question for you, Vicki. Why should Washington be paying more attention to the Caribbean?
Well, Jason, thank you for the question. And I think that you put your finger on it when you said collaboration. The Caribbean has, for all of the United States history, it has really been the third border. It protects incoming vessels, the incoming movements of goods and services. And so if you go back to the Second World War, you will note that the United States had several bases in the Caribbean. And so that was a pure military security. But in our modern world, of course, we have even a stronger relationship, the United States with the Caribbean, because of that British-UK history. So you have these same kinds of parliamentary democracies, strong democracies, institutions that tend to believe in a free press and free markets. So there's a lot of commonality. And the last thing I'll say on that question is there's also the diaspora in all of North America, where you have at least 8 or 9 million people of Caribbean descent between the United States and Canada.
So a lot of common history, diaspora, obviously the importance of the Caribbean strategically for the United States. So within that then, Vicki, what's your assessment of why the Caribbean has not received as much attention in Washington, especially given the geographic proximity and the strategic importance of the Caribbean? We've done some work before you joined at the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center on the Caribbean, looking at oil issues in the Caribbean, looking at issues of Chinese development regionally, but also with the Caribbean in mind. So, given the importance of the Caribbean, why is that importance not translate into policy attention in Washington?
Well, Jason, I think that everybody recognizes that the Caribbean islands are small in size. And when you're small in size and you've been a good ally, sometimes you get taken for granted. And so I think that there's been a certain amount of neglect, which in recent years with the advent of China into the region, all of a sudden America did start to look more closely at what was going on. I think we can clearly say that China's initial interest was just about Taiwan and the Caribbean countries that recognized Taiwan. But as they moved into the region, which is the wider Caribbean region, it's not just the CARICOM countries, they found that there were opportunities there. And let me say that I think part of it is that China probably considers itself still a developing country despite its great size and big markets. And therefore, the relationship is not so much one of dominance to subordinates. I think that that's a part of the dynamic that exists between the Caribbean and the United States right now. So I think that, as you said earlier, that collaboration, listening to one another and looking at, in this COVID time in particular, how we work together to make sure that the health infrastructures and the food infrastructures and the digital infrastructures work in the interest of our hemisphere. And I think that leaves a nice, solid space for cooperation.
And as we've talked about as well, there's so many regional and frankly global issues that translate into the Caribbean. And whether you're mentioning China's role, but also the crisis in Venezuela, security issues and trafficking issues, or as Vicki was just mentioning, COVID as well. And how do we rebuild? How does the region rebuild from COVID, and what type of access to financing is going to be necessary, especially with small island economies? The opportunity to have that financing, economies is frankly that have suffered so greatly with the drop in tourism due to COVID. So how to rebuild from that, and frankly, what are there opportunities for Caribbean islands to not only rebuild but to leapfrog in some of the development? So we're not just getting back to the pre-COVID moment, but we're getting using COVID to potentially even accelerate transformational developments that are critical for the region's long-term future.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. The transformation is important. We do not need to go back to where we were before. Let me break it into two. There is the tourism side, where I'll talk about the blue economy, but before I go there, let me just talk about the debt overhang. The Caribbean countries have been considered because of their GDP per capita as middle income or high income countries. This restricts their access to concessionary financing, and that measurement in and of itself is problematic because there is high income inequality in the region, and because of that inequality, the GDP per capita masks that. And so the communities that really need the concessional financing are unable to get it. Now, when we move on now to thinking about transformation, if we can manage to free up some of that debt overhang and identify broad industries where there will be a real return on investment, then I think we will be able to marshal the public development banks like the IDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, along with the World Bank, and tie them to private capital to work on the blue economy. And people always say, what is a blue economy? What is a green economy? But these are just economies, an economic system that looks at the planetary boundaries and says, we have to reduce our pollution, we have to clean the water, we have to have fisheries, and we have to have tourism, most importantly of all. And tourism depends heavily on a clean and pristine environment. So I think that the blue economy is a good umbrella for a lot of economic activity.
So Vicki, we have, as I mentioned, you began just in October. We've been working through the strategy for the initiative and preparing for some really great, not only events, but also moving forward with new solutions, new ideas that we can turn into action in 2021. You want to give you a moment to share with the audience some of your thoughts insofar as where we'll be going in 2021 as part of this initiative?
Well, as you know, Jason, I'm listening. I am a bridge. I consider myself a bridge. I consider the Atlantic Council in its traditional role and the Adrienne Arsht Center a bridge where people can come together and candidly express their views. And so we are going to listen through the end of this year. We're having 2 private roundtables where we'll be able to do that. And then hopefully by the end of January, we will have a public event where we will start to roll out some solutions to the issue of debt, to some projects that are cutting edge in terms of environmental protection and biodiversity protection. I would hope that some of those things will emerge from these private workshops. And we're going to be listening to the region, and we're going to be listening to the U.S. policymakers. And most of all, of course, we're going to be trying to figure out how to get the investors to help us make real some of these ideas.
Well, that's fantastic. And I invite everybody who's been watching this discussion to join us and to be a part of this effort. This is a critical moment for the Caribbean. There's a huge opportunity as well, of course. With any transfer of power in the United States, there's also an opportunity to rethink and build upon U.S. policy, and this is especially relevant when discussing the Caribbean. So invite everybody to work with us moving forward and to continue to think of us and think of the Caribbean Initiative at the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center is your resource for Caribbean issues. Vicki, final thoughts?
I would just echo that. There are many issues that, we didn't touch on, and migration and Venezuela and Cuba, we touched on them, but it is a complex of issues, and I think we will try to solve them in a holistic way by bringing a lot of experts in these various areas to bear, so we get the best answers.
Well, fantastic, Vicki. So great to have you part of the team.
Thank you.
And to be sharing your insight as part of this Expert of the Americas discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Yes, come and join us.